Right. So we'll give our audience just a few moments to go ahead and get settled in. In the meantime, I'll pick y'all's brain a little bit. What's a favorite movie or TV show that y'all are into recently? Terry, let's go ahead and get started with you.
I'm just going to go straight to movie Breakfast at Tiffany's.
What?
Old one, but good one.
Stands the test of time. It's awesome. How about you, Anna?
I'm binging a little bit on the Stranger Things new season. So 1883 and Stranger Things are probably the latest.
Haven't gotten into 1883 yet, but Stranger Things is definitely awesome. Oh, I will have to give that a viewing. How about you, Jamie? Anything good recently?
I also just finished Stranger Things, so I'd be curious, Anna, when you finish it, what you think.
I'm not done yet.
Pardon?
I'm not done yet. Don't tell me.
I'm not done yet. I'm definitely
no
not
spoilers too.
Afterwards, let me know what you think. I will go with my favorite movie of all time. I am going to date myself, however. It's Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I watched it every single year since 1989. Best quotes. Yes. I use them all year long. So.
Yeah, that's a definite one. Yeah, that's a good one. And how about you, Chloe?
Well, I love all of these. First of all, I'm like, now I know what I want to watch tonight too. I'm like, oh, I have to revisit this. And also just finished Stranger Things. So Anna, I won't say anything about it. I am really excited for the next season of Succession to start, which I don't know if anyone has seen that one. It is terrible and good at the same time. Like every character is just awful. It's really good.
Love that. I'm going to put that in my notes for this too. Oh, got even some audience love on that one. Nice. I would say recently my favorite show, I watched The Bear recently on Hulu. Yeah. So good. Only one season, unfortunately, but super good. It really, it is amazing. It really captures restaurant life very, very accurately, I would say. And my favorite movie recently, super, super good. Totally recommend that one. And 300, one of my favorite movies of all time also.
Great movie.
Yeah, lots of action.
Great movie.
Lots of great stuff in that. Well, cool. So let's go ahead and get started here. We'll dive right in. And this panel is So You Want to Be a CRO. So thank you everyone for joining us today on the third day of our Sales Reimagined Summit, our Revenue Excellence Summit. And today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you not familiar with Modern Sales Pros, it's the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. And we also don't want you to have to reinvent the wheel on your own. We got you covered. If you're not a member yet, you'll be invited to join shortly after the summit, and I hope that you will. And this summit would not be possible without our amazing sponsors who you will see on this slide here. Kudos to them for making this happen. These amazing orgs are not only sponsoring this specific event, but all 3 full days and 17 events total in the summit. To learn more about these innovative companies, click on the Sponsor Booths tab at the top of the event page and check out all the ungated, wonderful, valuable resources that our sponsors have made available just for us this week. And there might also be some surprises and giveaways in there, so don't miss that out in the booths. Definitely check them out. And this week's summit will be full of ways to completely reimagine sales. Although we're at the very end now, this is the last panel, so I hope y'all have enjoyed it so far. And I'm going to go ahead and dive into the agenda for this session. I'll go over some housekeeping rules. The speakers will do an introduction of themselves to tell you what makes them so awesome, and then we'll dive right into the content. We'll have some time for live Q&A, but audience, please feel free to pepper in your questions throughout, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up with some key takeaways at the end. And before we dive into the content today, let's go over some quick housekeeping notes. First, this event is being recorded, so you'll be able to access the recording and the key takeaways on the summit page of the MSP website following the event. please share it with anyone on your team or anyone that you feel would benefit from watching that. And second, go ahead and familiarize yourself with Goldcast. If you have a question for our speakers, don't be shy. Go ahead and pop it into the Q&A portion or into the chat, and we'll try to hit as many as possible. That chat is wide open, so please feel free to interact with each other. Drop your LinkedIn if you'd like, something that you like about a point we just made, let us know. And lastly, go ahead and check out all of our amazing speakers and sponsors by navigating to the tabs at the top of your screen. You don't want to miss out on that. So again, this panel is titled, So You Want to Be a CRO? And I am super honored to be helping host this panel. There's not very many women CROs out there. So I really appreciate y'all being on here and imparting your knowledge on us. So as Beyonce says, who runs the world? Girls do. So let's go ahead and get started. Terry will be our moderator this morning. So this afternoon, Terry, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Well, I will repeat everything you just said. I am absolutely excited, beyond excited to be here today to moderate this. We have some amazing women to speak to and share some amazing insights. Terry Long, VP of Enablement at CB Insights. I've been in an enablement leader role for 16 years. And previous to that, I was a seller myself, carrying a quota for 10 years. Great opportunities, great experiences. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to, let's start with Anna to introduce herself first.
Hi, Anna Baird, CRO at Outreach. I kind of have a unique background. I'm a CPA. I was a partner at KPMG. I've been a CFO, a COO, and a CRO. So get a little bit of broad perspective across the business with a little bit of my background. And super, super excited to spend some time with all of you today.
Thanks, Anna. Jamie?
Sure. So thank you all for having us. We're really excited to be here. My name is Jamie Buss, and I am currently the CRO at Articulate, which, if you're not familiar, we are a global e-learning platform for the enterprise. I've been doing this role for just over half a year. Prior to that, I was at Zendesk for a large 5-year block, which was amazing, and bunch of startups. I also worked at Andreessen Horowitz for a stint as well. So I kind of got to be in the heart of Silicon Valley for 3.5 years or so, which was a really, really unique opportunity. So I look forward to being here, and I look forward to all your questions.
Thanks, Jamie. Chloe.
Hi, Terry. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. And I'm so excited to be with this fantastic group of ladies. My name's Chloe. I'm currently the CRO at a company called Pilot.com. We are a VC-backed Series C tech startup, really focused on providing financial services like bookkeeping, tax, CFO, controller to startups and small businesses. I've spent the last 15 plus years in revenue and go-to-market roles everywhere from Series A companies running sales and marketing to pre-IPO companies like Eventbrite to now Pilot. So really excited to just have this conversation with you all today.
Fantastic. Thank you, ladies. So, Jamie, if you don't mind, I want to start off with you because in a previous conversation, you had talked about CROs being the voice of the C-staff. Can you talk to the group a little bit about what other skills besides sales ability are valuable as a CRO?
Yeah, certainly. I think this kind of stemmed from like a bit of that conversation that might differentiate between like a VP of sales role versus moving more into a CRO role. And obviously I've done both of those. I was an SVP at Zendesk for the stint I was there, and now I'm in the CRO role. I think I really have enjoyed the role. Granted, it's been like not the most tremendous amount of time. I think some of the biggest differences are it's not just about executing the selling motion, but it's really thinking about revenue as a whole. So how do you retain it? Like what product direction might that mean? What partnerships might that mean? I think also, I find myself partnering with pretty much every other division really closely. So I love that. Like Anna has a CFO background. I can see how incredibly useful and helpful that would be from a CRO perspective. You have to not just have the selling chops, but the operational chops to complement it. So there's a lot of data. You don't want to do analysis paralysis, of course, but you have to understand all the different levers you have in a business, as well as understand what is your CFO going to care about? What is your CMO looking at, and what kind of data are they going to be pulling, and how do you partner best with marketing? Assuming I don't own marketing, our marketing is a partner organization for me. I personally prefer that. I honestly don't think the best marketers necessarily want to work for a seller. I'm definitely a seller, so I'm just calling a spade a spade. So I partner with my marketing business partner, as well as product engineering, finance. All of them are really, really important for me. And the voice, when I say the voice at the table, it's because I am probably having more customer conversations than most of my peers are. I'm seeing what's going on from a lot of different perspectives. And so as we're making decisions, I feel like I'm bringing a vantage point, whether it's on product or marketing or whatnot, that perhaps has that unique vantage point from having more of that customer interaction perspective.
Right. Great. I love the amount of collaboration you just spoke to. That's fantastic. Anna, Chloe, anything that you'd like to add there, or any other areas of differentiation between the VP of sales?
Well, the one thing I'll just say is I think there's just been an incredible evolution in the CRO role, and quite honestly, the VP of sales role too, but especially CROs, because it's the most complex it's ever been. And that's really evolved a lot, I think, over the last 5 years. And it is, I call it, it's part CFO, because you do have to understand the data and what data you need to be able to understand and collaborate in the leading and lagging indicators and the metrics to run your business. Part CIO, because you need to understand the technology landscape. It is evolving all the time. And how do you collect that data efficiently to be able to make the decisions that we talked about? And obviously for all of us, chief people officer, chief HR officer, it is leading a multi-generational workforce in a hybrid, remote, whatever work environment you're in, with all of the economic, social, health issues that are happening out there. I've never talked more about mental health in the workplace in my entire career, or politics, or pick the topic.
Right.
So I think it is just, you have now become this center of leadership, because those go-to-market teams do drive the revenue, and they are the ones that are customer facing, and that customer interaction is getting harder and harder to see because they're also all dispersed, right? So it is really complex, and I think there's just opportunity to lean into how do you make sure you are collaborating with those people that Jamie noted, and you are also garnering the skill sets to make sure you're learning from them on how do you make sure you're running your piece of this organization as effectively as you possibly can.
Right. Absolutely. So, with that, there's I'm assuming quite a few people on this call right now that are thinking about, what would I do if I needed to transition, or if I wanted to transition into the role of a CRO? So how best does somebody do that? And what is the VC board looking for?
I'll go ahead and I'll jump in.
Jump in.
Oh, the one caveat I'll say is that as far as transitioning from another role into CRO, I'm probably not the most well-versed in that, only because I've been in sales since like 2000, and that's kind of a long time. So I've been in this type of, at least in a selling environment, for a long time. However, I have been on the VC side, and I've also, I've interviewed with a bunch of companies as well, because I was really selective when I wanted to make that CRO role jump. So I think that if VCs are going to look for what they view as the least risky option, I think and founders too, I think what they should look for is well-rounded, operational, and a general. So how are you going to build a machine, not just be a Rambo type of individual? I don't think that every company knows, though, to look for the general as opposed to the Rambo, so to speak. So when you're qualifying for looking at an opportunity, my suggestion would be you need to qualify them as to what they're looking for. Why are they looking to hire a CRO? What gap are they trying to fill? What's the relationship what the CEO has with sales today? That'll give you a lay of the land of their perception of the role, because there will be companies out there whose perception of the CRO role, this is my opinion, so take it for what it's worth, but in my experience and opinion, there are companies and CEOs out there who are still looking for, I just want you to run around and close deals.
Right.
To Anna's point, though, the job is so much more than that to be effective. And so companies that are going to hire the Uber salesperson to just run around and close deals, I think they're going to be less successful than those who are looking for someone who can actually run a business. So it's kind of a two-way street. Like, you should be qualifying the company as to who they're looking for. And then what type of job do you want? Do you really love leaning into the sales piece and maybe that's the right fit for you? Or do you really like more of the like bigger picture, strategic, general, like thinking more from a bigger picture? So
Sure.
I think it goes both ways.
Chloe, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I think Jamie really hit it around knowing how the particular business that you are looking at defines the CRO title, because it can encompass so much, or it can be a subset of the business. And so really knowing what the VCs are looking for, what the CEO is looking for is critical, because to Jamie's point, it helps you align what you're looking for to that, right? I think from my perspective, I also grew up in sales. Through that began to run retention, through that began to run some marketing. And so having that kind of choose your own adventure, mainly around go-to-market, but with that expansion piece really helped me have some sort of like protected at bats and know what worked and what didn't work, especially in different stages of companies. And so I think how that helped me know where I wanted to go was not just in terms of I want to run revenue and I want to be responsible for the customer, and not just in a revenue silo, but as Jamie and Anna mentioned earlier, I work almost as much with my peers and with other functions as I do with the directly revenue responsible teams, right? And that's different from when I was VP of sales at Eventbrite, for instance, right? And that's a really important thing to note, because you have to ensure that the strategy of the revenue team also ladders into the strategy of not just the business, but these other functions that are going to help you get there and make the customer ultimately happy, which is the end goal, right? You're all here for the customer. On the VC side, what I think is also important though, is to Jamie's point, like understanding what it is they want and how does that actually come into practice with your CEO. And it doesn't mean that you're CEO and you have to be best friends, like absolutely not. I disagree with my CEO all the time and I love it. It's like one of my favorite parts of our relationship, but it's not because we are fundamentally opposed, right? It's like a fun, healthy, like discursive exercise, but I know that he and I are driving for the same outcomes because we did that during the interview process or the sales process, if you will. I've been on the other side where I've worked for CEOs who we fundamentally were at odds, and that was like a bad sales process on my side, right? Like I didn't align early and I made the wrong purchase to use that as an analogy. So I think really investigating not only what does the role look like for you, but what are the expectations, and starting with like, how do you define CRO here is really, really important. But it really, for me, started by having more opportunities to work in adjacent revenue roles and then understand where my strengths were and where I wanted to challenge myself.
Sure. That's a fantastic description. Anna, how does yours differ? How does your experience differ?
The only thing I'd say is I think we're all hitting on it. And it's funny, Chloe, my CEO did a post about when I called him an asshole. So sure, you do have to have tough discussions. But I think it's also about the expectation, obviously, and Jamie, you hit it well. There's multiple views of what a CRO is, and you really do need to understand that. But it is, from the VCs that I have seen and the work that I have done across both all the roles I've had, is about you coming in and being a leader for the company. So whether I was a CFO, the COO, or the CRO, that expectation has not changed. Now, I also make sure that that's what they are looking for in the roles that I take. So it's mutual there. But I do think there's been an evolution also in that expectation. And it's what you all hit on. I have to have a ton of empathy I can't succeed just in sales. I have to make sure that marketing and product and finance and legal are also being very successful in what they need to do. And I'll tell you all the time, and it's what you hit. My head of HR was like, well, Anna, maybe you need this head more than I do or whatever. We're doing budget trade-offs. And I'm like, if you guys can't support me and I have to spend more time because you can't support my organization well enough, I'm not going to be as effective. So I need you to have the resources you need so that I can spend time on things that are not HR related. and so I think there's such a collaborative path to success that you have to have across that executive team. So it's not only your relationship with your CEO, it's your relationship with all of them. I mean, it's a family, and you win as a family, you die as a family. I've seen companies with amazing, I was a partner at KPMG. I was there for 17 years in Silicon Valley. I saw a lot of companies come and go. And I have seen great product, bad leadership not be successful. I've seen great leadership, bad product not be successful. You have to have both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. staying in the vein of now we're a successful CRO, Anna, you talked about moving away from intuition-based selling and into more of an infusion of technology for better decision making. Can you share with the group a little bit more about what you mean by that, and like what are the metrics that you're looking for on a regular basis, and how do you take that data and use it to inspire and empower your teams?
It's literally, the pace is incredible. And I think for a lot of teams out there, it's honestly overwhelming. I mean, the technology that we have today didn't even exist 4 years ago. Like literally didn't exist. The things that are being built right now, when you talk about real-time conversational intelligence, the ability to put battle cards up on a screen when a seller is talking to a customer for them to answer questions correctly, didn't exist. It didn't exist 2 years ago. In fact, it barely existed a year ago. So, but you have this incredible breadth of technology because of the advancements. And this is why I love software. It's like, think new things and new ideas and new abilities are getting built into systems all the time. And unless you as a leader are taking advantage of understanding what you can get faster and more effectively, you're missing pieces. And a lot of us screw up. And, I talk about being a partner at KPMG. I had a $6 million quota a year. I was a global lead partner on Google and Intuit and a bunch of others. I had some serious revenue to bring in. It was not just hanging out. So there is a whole capability you need to have on how do I bring in that revenue and how do I make sure my teams are as effective as they possibly can be? Because if you look foundationally, it's cumulative, right? If your teams on the ground are as effective as they possibly can be at being efficient, predictable, and growing their piece of the business, then the leaders that oversee them are going to be even more effective because they can be more strategic. They don't have to spend the time going, okay, wait, did they do this? Did they do that? Are they working? Are they not working? Are they in Mexico surfing? Who knows? So it's being able to understand foundationally what's happening with that customer interaction. Relying on that at a manager level makes them much better coaches, much better time spent. And that ladders up. It's cumulative. Their VP is going to be more effective. And as a CRO, obviously I'm much more effective because of that technology. But we grew up in times where it was intuition-based selling. I've done this before. I know it's successful. I'm going to do that again. And I don't know if you notice, but our market keeps breaking. I'm like, after 2 recessions and a pandemic, I'm thinking I was a cockroach in my last life and I'm being punished now. I'm not quite sure, but it is, the trends don't mean anything. What's happening real time? What's happening right now? And the best thing you can do for your teams, to your question, Terry, is make sure they're able to see around corners so you can help them predict their business better so they don't get surprised. And the data that's out there is helping do that better and better all the time.
Yes, agreed. The evolution of technology is beyond comprehension at this point. Jamie, from a metrics perspective, are there other metrics that you're solely focused on or other things you're doing to inspire and empower your teams?
This is actually a really hot topic at our company in particular. So my company has been around for some time. We've only been selling SaaS for about 6 years, but there was a lot of disciplines that weren't built in initially. So to Anna's point, we weren't really collecting data to begin with. So I don't know if any one of you are in this scenario or walking into this scenario or may in the future. But the first thing I try to do is look and see what is even available to me, what technology is in place, and what data is available. And then I start identifying where the gaps are and how to fill them. Because if you don't know, if you spend $1 here, it's going to become $2 somewhere else or whatever the math is. It's really hard to make strategic decisions on how to move the business forward. So that was my first thing, is do I have a through line to spend? So if I spend on these initiatives, am I going to have a result due to that? So that kind of goes to Anna's point of you need technology to be able to capture all of that. So that's a process we're working on. I think that's step one. I'm not going to go into specific metrics. Everyone's products are very different. Mine almost has a B2C and a B2B nature to it. So I think going down the rabbit hole of specifics might be a little challenging. I would say the second point is when we say marketing qualified lead or a sales qualified lead, an MQL or an SQL, our sales and marketing and whoever else needs to be aware, do we all mean the same thing? So you need to have a shared data definition of what does each thing mean. We're still working on that. That's a work in progress for us as well. We've got great collaboration, so we're definitely getting there. But that's the other thing, right? First, do you have the population of data you think you need? Then does everyone agree that when you talk about an MQL, that everyone agrees that's what that means? And then thirdly, I think it's really important to share those metrics with the team because, from all the leadership and engagement surveys I've done with teams over the time, when the team doesn't understand what they're delivering and how it impacts the overall company, it could be an SDR or a BDR or an account manager, success rep, an account executive for new business, whatever it is. If you don't understand how my sales engineers, if they don't understand the impact they're making on their business, their engagement will go down. So to Anna's earlier point as well, engagement is a really tough thing for all of us right now. With the world just feels more difficult just to be in right now, I think, for everybody. So the more you can keep people engaged and really help articulate the impact they're making on the company, then sharing those metrics in that healthy way, I think really helps improve. Instead of feeling cloying, like you're being micromanaged, it's more of like, here's how you are impacting our business. We did this, and this is how we were able to, this is what we achieved because of it. But I think there's a positive way you can infuse that into your culture.
Absolutely. Chloe, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I love some of the stuff that was already said. And Terry, you can probably relate to this quite well based on what you do. The sort of getting folks to understand like how to do something that's repeatable means that things are predictable, which then means that you have consistency. And having that consistency is like the secret. It is like the least sexy thing to say about revenue, but it is like, to me, I just want consistency, right? But the way to do that is exactly what Anna and Jamie have been saying, which is like, how do you get folks in your business to be fluent and literate in the same terminology? And that's not just within the revenue teams. That's like it's like positioning, right? It's like you want everyone to understand why these metrics matter. And what's important about that is they then become less of a report out or a readout and less reactive and more of a way to focus on your leading indicators. So you know what you have to do to continue to ensure that you're doing all those things to get to scalability, right? And one thing that we did at Pilot that might be like a helpful example is when I first started, our marketing leader and I sat down and built out our go-to-market funnel. So everything from like tippy top of funnel all the way down to closed won dollar value and number of closed won net new logos. And we did that because we really wanted to orient the entire go-to-market side of the business around our North Star, which is top line revenue growth right now, but the ways that we get there. And almost just sort of like culturally, it was important for us to feel like and act as though we are part of the same team. We are the same function. Our roles just have different outcomes tied to them, right? Like there's just different scopes. And now it's something that we look at every single week for that consistency play, of course. But then we also know, what am I doing today that's going to drive this part of the funnel that my role is kind of tied to, right? And if I'm not seeing that, then maybe I can manage that up a little bit better, which to Anna's point, once you have your team enabled and knowing what to do with those metrics, your leadership team from frontline to VP and up is allowed to do or has the space to do some of those other things that are part of their role. But they don't have to be so worried that they're not going to get that because the teams know what to do there. I really do think that like the data literacy and the data fluency piece tied to outcomes is so important and a really important skill for anyone at any level of their career needs to learn in order to continue to grow. So I'm very passionate about this piece.
We can see that you're also passionate about it. One thing that I love, you all said that's my Midwest coming through. You all said the same thing around empowering the reps, empowering the front line, empowering leadership to really understand where they're making an impact. And I think that's just such an incredible thread all the way through. I could speak to that forever and ever from an enablement perspective as well. But I appreciate that that's where that lens is going. That does have significant impact. Talk to me a little, let's shift a little bit, but in terms of the future of revenue C-suite, given the current economic conditions, we started tapping into that a little bit with Anna. What does that look like for us today? What does the C-suite care about in terms of overall health within the organization?
I can go ahead and I bet Anna's going to give the best answer here. I mean, only because there's a CFO element, I think, to the current environment. But I think that if you looked at even, I don't know, like 6 months ago, you think, guys, it wasn't that long ago, where basically growth was paramount. So what VCs were looking for and what the market, even the public markets were looking for growth. And we weren't really focused on the health of that growth, meaning were you profitable or not? I think that as money looks like it's going to continue to get more expensive, we've already seen signaling from Facebook in a not so human-centered way, and then from Google in a more human-centered way, but that they're going to be tightening up on their hiring. They're not going to be hiring as much, right, for the next 18 months. VCs are going to become more selective as to where they're going to give money. There'll still be money, but it's going to be more competitive and harder to get money, which means not only do you have to have a healthy growth rate, but you have to do it in a responsible way. I think that when you're in a very high growth oriented environment, businesses are more inclined to throw headcount at the problem. And I think that's what we saw happening leading up to the last, few months here. Mm-hmm. And so candidates had all the power in the interview process because they're right. I mean, they had all the power. And I think what's going to start to happen is that's going to shift, and it's going to be more people on the market looking for things. And because companies have to look at their bottom line and the top line, which means if you have a problem, maybe I look at implementing outreach because it's an all-in-one solution and I don't have to look at buying 4 different products to solve the same problem. That's maybe a more economic solution for me. And maybe that means I don't have to hire X% as many reps because now I've increased the productivity of my team. So I think you're going to start seeing people make decisions. Do I increase my productivity per person by making this change or making this investment? Mm-hmm. That's going to come in more into play because they're going to want to keep the top line growth where it is. But I think that the companies are going to have to make it in a more healthy way, meaning you can't just throw people at it, right, Terry? I mean, you're in enablement, like you're focused on getting people to be productive as possible. Mm-hmm. It's not just about onboarding a ton of more people than you need. It's, I think, going to be a balance.
Right. Agree.
Chloe, you should go first.
Okay. I mean, plus one to everything that Jamie said. I just want to pick up on the last piece where when you think about, it's all about improving efficiency and margin right now, right? Doing more with what you have, doing more with less, all of those things. And I do want to just underscore the comment about enablement. I think investing in your team right now is actually the right thing to do in order to increase that productivity and improve performance across the board. Ideally, you're just going to get more from folks who are already here, and that can also take some of the pressure off of hiring folks and ramping. I think kind of rhetorically, the revenue and chief revenue officer matters the most right now too, because it is also just pointing to the fact that you have to investigate the full life cycle of your customer right now and understand at every milestone within that customer life cycle, there's important things to look for that might be a little bit different than what you usually look at during a time like this, right? And so that communication piece of understanding not only what's happening at top of funnel, like are things slowing down? Are you hearing things through your SDR team, through your marketing team? What's happening in the sales process? But more importantly, what's happening with your existing customer base? And are there any behavior shifts that you're seeing? And what do you do there, right? Is NPS changing? Is are retention rates changing? And that's the stuff you really want to focus on, because that's honestly the lever that you want to pull right now during this time, because you can kind of assume this generally happens, that top line and go to market is what's going to get impacted the most first. So really spend time giving more love and figuring out what to do with your install base if you haven't already, to figure out how to preserve and save and do right by them too, right? Because what happens is somebody does cancel or leave for whatever reason, you want to always be top of mind and have them come back to you if and when that time comes back. So I do think that the revenue piece of, our titles here is super, super important in times like this when you're thinking about investigating, inspecting, and communicating, versus this is not a time to work in silos. Like this is the time to really understand what's happening there and hyper focusing on the customer, and the behavior there is important. And then tying that back to the enablement piece, you need to be working with your teams weekly, daily, et cetera, because your talk tracks might be different right now, depending on who you sell to or who you support or serve. How is your team equipped to have conversations that right now are a little bit weird or different, right? Especially if you have a younger revenue force, how do you make sure that they feel confident going into those conversations and can show up as a human being. Ideally, we're doing that all the time, right? But, it's so early on in how certain businesses might be feeling the impact of what's happening that we just have to be really considerate. And I think investing in your team to do that is really, really important right now.
Wonderful. Anna, we're gonna let you go now.
No, Jamie and Chloe said it so well. I mean, it really is, and there's not a CFO out there who isn't telling their team to slow down, pause, or stop. And as they're evaluating what's going to happen here, right? Everyone is trying to understand what's going to happen next. And we just rolled out efficiency messaging to our entire team on going and talking about how our product helps, companies be more efficient because of what you just said, Chloe. That is the talk track of all of the C-suite teams, including my own. And that efficiency is not just obviously in our go-to-market teams, it's across the organization. So how can other pieces of the organization help each other be more efficient and effective as we run the business? To what Jamie said, they're not valuing growth anymore, it's profitability. And if you don't have that path to profitability articulated well with a plan that looks reasonable, that's why those valuations are getting hit for obviously so many of the SaaS companies in particular over these last weeks, literally. It's been a little crazy, but absolutely over obviously the last several months. I think one of the things that you also touched on is we have a multi-generational workforce, and there's a lot of them who've never been through a recession. And so one of the things we talk about a lot about at Outreach in the C-suite is helping them to try to understand what this means. And you got to control what you can control. Focus on making sure you're building a healthy business, because you can't control all these things externally. But what we can control is what you're doing every day. Are we doing the right things for our customers? Are we listening? Are we leaning in? Are we understanding? Are we looking for leading indicators? And I was just with my team looking at usage reports of our customers to say, is usage coming down that doesn't look natural? Because are they doing a layoff? And we hadn't heard it yet, and maybe they are. So use those leading indicators to say, how are we getting signs of maybe economic challenges that our customers might be going through, even though we haven't heard it yet? Because often whoever owns our product may not even know yet. And maybe we do. So we're trying to watch that too, just to say, how do we make sure we're getting in front of and talking to customers? And we're literally all the way out through Q4 and talking to customers. Where are their heads? What is the tone in their organizations? How are they feeling? And to be honest, we serve well over 5,000 companies. They're all go-to-market teams. We are seeing companies shut down. We are seeing wholesale teams let go. We are seeing layoffs. It is early, but it is starting, and that's just the reality for all of us. And so, Jamie, to your point, it's happening across organizations. How can we, make sure that we're helping our company be as healthy as possible as you look at what your teams are focused on?
There's quite a few questions in the chat, and actually one specific to health that I think is a natural transition. So Leo is asking, what are some pain points regarding employee wellness and their sense of balance, which empowers positive financial outcomes?
I'll take that real quick, because it's something we've spent so much time on. I mean, I've had coaches do mental health tips every week. It has been, I think we've gone through these pivots, and every 3 or 4 months, it's been another pivot, which has also, I think, been straining on people. And so we did, sent everybody home, and then everybody worked really, really hard at home because they thought we were coming back in 6 months. And then we didn't come back in 6 months. And then they're tired because they've been working so hard. And then you have that lack of introduction into a company with all these new people who got hired in a remote environment where they didn't have the same kind of bond, didn't have the same ability to build those relationships and have the chat in the restroom that we all end up having, or at the elevator, or in grabbing coffee. And so you missed some of those things. And then in the middle of all that, obviously we had political strife, and obviously the pandemic and social strife, creating a angst across all of us. And when you're isolated at home and something bad happens, you have a bad call with a customer. When you're isolated at home, that sits with you. When you read something on the news that is impactful to you personally, it sits with you. And this is why I'm pushing my team so hard to try to come back to the office if they're not a fully remote employee, because you need to be the difference is, and they're doing it out there, and I see that we have dogs, they're petting a puppy, they had a bad call, like go over and pet a dog, it will help. but also just somebody next to them going, shake it off. It's going to be all right. I had one of those yesterday too. Or, being able to talk about it with somebody about, hey, did you see that news thing about whatever? Obviously the Roe versus Wade stuff is a crazy hot topic right now. And so being able to have a way to build human bonds again, I think is absolutely critical for us. And what I see with my youngest people is they're afraid to come to the office because they've never been to one in their career now. So now I've got the opposite problem. How do I convince them? So we have margarita bars. We're doing all kinds of interesting things to think about to help force the balance of having that connection, which helps with balance overarching. We've obviously done a million different things. I've given refresh days. So every second Friday of every month, my go-to-market teams have off. So they can plan longer weekends to just get away. We've done that for 2 years now. Just lots, you have to pivot and think it's going to hit somebody, not everybody. What do I do that is impactful to the team? Lots of coaching.
A lot of coaching. And you also hit on empathy multiple times throughout your conversation there, which is great. Again, I think it's about driving that empathy. There was also a question about leveraging emotional intelligence as a leader, especially right now. How are you doing that?
Yeah, I think it's being real. And that sounds really corny, but I think the way it's just to face things head on, right? Like not being scared of talking about stuff that's happening in the world, as Anna just said, and it just seems to be building and building and building. And as you have your team sitting in their apartments, or wherever, like in the same room every single day and not having a break, a commuting break even, or a break between work, they walked to one room to another. And then you compound that monotony with what's happening outside of their apartments. It is so hard right now. Like that, I think angst is the absolute best way to put it. It's like existential dread. And that is so hard to get through because it feels like it's never going to end. And so I think just calling that out, right? Like when things keep getting harder and harder, because there's not a magic wand. So far, there hasn't been an easy way of doing it. And I think right now, the emotional intelligence piece that has worked the best for the people who I really respect and look up to, the people within my business, the people within my team, is just calling it out, right? And just saying whew, this is really hard. Like I'm having a hard time, and being honest about it, because what you're doing is that you're making that part normal. And it just it's a conversation that somebody's having in their head nonstop. And so why not help them put that out into words? Like we know that is a helpful mechanism. And so it's such a little thing to do. But I think just forcing yourself to say things out loud and in front of your team and publicly is such a great way to lead them. And it's so lightweight to do. And I think to Anna's point as well, ways in which you can help people change their perspective. It can be as literally as basic as we're on the phone. Hey, get off the Zoom call me on my cell. We're going to both go outside and take a walk right now. You are literally going to see a different horizon line and your brain's going to change. I mean, you're going to get fresh air. You're going to move, especially if you have folks who are anxious, that sort of stuff, we're going to do this together. It can change somebody's day. And I think those little things that have become hard to do because everything's hard to do right now. Let's get real. It's hard to do basic stuff. Mm-hmm. That exercise is one way to get people to actually, and yourself, feel a little bit better. So I think those are some examples of how I think about leading with emotional intelligence. And hopefully that's kind of concrete too.
Yeah, I'm just gonna piggyback on those really quick because there's a model that I completely agree. If you're a low EQ, it's really hard. I think it's really hard to be a great leader if you're a low EQ. I think you have to think about it as a leader, just any of your leaders in your company, think about how you're messaging things and how it would come across. So yes, it is about, my company as a human-centered organization, as its philosophy, we gave the entire company the week off of 4th of July. We gave everyone a $4,000 one-time inflation bonus when all the inflation started to go through the roof. We're very conscious of what's happening at folks at a personal level. Mm-hmm. But I also think that our communication as leaders, if you look at, I go back to what I said about the Facebook communication, when you say there are people at this company that probably don't need to be here, that is a horrible message. And your employees are going to feel scared. It's like the lion just stepped on the prairie and they're no longer safe. And when you don't feel safe, you're no longer going to be creative, you're going to be protective, and you're not going to do your best work. Mm-hmm. So that means your best people are just got drawn but down with everybody else as well. So there's a model that I wanted to reference that an exec coach gave to me years ago, and I find to be super helpful. It's called a SCARF model. So it's SCARF, and it stands for security, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So whenever I'm trying to structure messaging, if I have to do a change in the org, I'm always trying to think about, is this going to strike a chord? Is this going to feel unfair to a certain group? Why might it feel unfair, and how might I position it differently? Is this going to threaten their sense of security? Are they going to feel like, oh gosh, we're going to move to this? Does that mean I might not be able to perform up to that level? So that model helps me put myself, I like models. I'm a process person. So I like having something to lean back on. So for me, it helps me put myself in the shoes of the audience and give me a sense of perspective of how they might respond. And then how can I get ahead of that and message things in a way that's not going to feel like, oh, like my people are on a prairie and a lion just stepped on the edge. Like I'm trying to avoid that from happening so that I can keep people productive and engaged. Even because we are going to have to message things. I mean, Anna and Chloe and Terry, I'm sure you all have to message things sometimes that maybe are more difficult. Yes, we have to have high empathy, and sometimes we have to make a change in the business too. So I think it's important to have a model to kind of lean back on to help think about how people might feel based on a change.
I want the SCARF model. Send that to me, please.
I will. I find it very, very helpful.
Oh, I love that.
So, and it's interesting. There was another question, and I think it's very relevant. It's like, what's next? What's next for the CRO? Where do you go after you are done being a successful CRO?
Hawaii, you just live on the beach. Sorry.
Retirement home on the beach. No, one thing I just as there's lots of, I think I'll hit that quickly, but sorry to cut you off, Chloe. I think I like that idea though. I was going to say there's so many options for leaders out there. And as you think about what it is that you want to get out of the next phase of your career, and all of us as CROs, I know you're getting offers to be a president, a CEO of a smaller company, lots and lots of things that come your way in this role. And one of the things that I love personally, and I'm 54 now, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do something different in the next phase. I don't want to be a CEO. It was like, you're going to go be a CEO. I'm like, no, I'm not. I joined my first board. I'm on the board of SeatGeek. I love it because I was in Silicon Valley for 35 years. I've been doing technology for my entire career since I was 23. That's all I know. It's all I've done. And it's like buying a house. You finally get good at it and then you don't do it anymore. And so I feel like I need to go teach other people how to buy houses better, learn the things that I learned the hard way. And so giving back, I think, is a big piece of what I'm looking at. And I'm going to do that through board work, I think, would be my next phase of a career. I love the board that I'm on. I'm obviously full-time CRO of a several $100 million organization that we've grown from 25 million 4 years ago. So I've got a lot going on right now, but I can take one board over time, obviously I won't do this forever. I will be doing it for quite a bit longer, but I won't do it forever. I'd love to do that. I think but it's what is it that floats your boat, right? I mean, there's giving back in so many different ways. There's taking on CEO roles. There's there's consulting, which I know a lot of people love to do as well to help, lots of different companies. Just a few things that I think that you can do from this to what that next opportunity is.
They all sound amazing. I'm not going to lie. So I think we're getting close to time, but I do want to be sensitive because there was another supporting question there. And it was in terms of thinking about that evolution from sales ops to rev ops to CRO, is that a natural transition? And if so, what are some of the words of advice that you would have for people as they're starting to look ahead in their career? They're very early on. What does that road look like? What should they be thinking about?
I think that's part of it. Like, I don't think the operations side is the whole story. I think it's really important. I think, again, that kind of data literacy, knowing how to plan, know how to create a plan within a larger plan, knowing how to create targets that are, leading indicators as well, and aligning teams. I think that's super important. But I think the other piece that's really important from a CRO perspective is that people element, right? And in two ways, right? So it's like, do you have experience managing teams and managing expectations across different types of teams? Because again, your CS team has different outcomes than your sales team, as an example. So those are two different motions. And so that's important to note. Then the other side is, what is your time with the customer? And truly, like, what we are here to do, and I would argue everyone in the business, whether it's an engineer, a recruiter, or someone from legal, whomever, everyone's on the hook for the customer experience. And so do you have actual experience working with customers in some, you don't have to sell, right? But in some sort of way where you know how to prioritize that experience. That's how you're going to be successful, is ultimately through your customer. And so from the ops side, that is your backbone. That is super, super important. But there's these other layers to it that I think you really do need to have in order to be a strong CRO. So I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, and I think too, Chloe, I totally agree with all of that. I also think that if you're coming from a RevOps and you've never carried a bag before, so if you've never been on account management or new business acquisition side in some capacity, I don't care selling what, but some capacity of customer facing role in that role, I think you either have to, what is your sales playbook? I do think it's important to have a perspective on that. Or if you know that you don't explicitly have one, that you need to make sure you hire well to complement that, because that'll be a piece that you might, you just have to be aware of your flanks. I think anytime you go into a job, I know I'm not a marketer. I love working with marketing. It's not necessarily how my brain works. And so I look for jobs that marketing is my sister organization, that I'm not running it. I'm not probably the best to run marketing at this point. Maybe not ever, I don't know, but this is not my jam, you know? Like, I really like sales success, sales engineering, enablement. Great, I can do the RevOps, I can do that all day long. But the marketing piece, I'm learning a lot on the marketing side of things at this point in my career. So I think it's just important to know, what do you bring to the table and what's your flank, so that either you can bolster yourself for that, maybe you get that customer experience, to Chloe's point, if that's what you're lacking. What is your playbook? Like, you're going to be a general, so you have to be able to put people into a system and be able to hire B players. You're not going to be able to hire all A players as you scale an organization to thousands of people. You have to hire Bs and perform at As. And what's your playbook to get your Bs to perform at As? I think you have to either have a perspective or make sure you hire really well to cover that flank.
Very thoughtful. Anna, anything you want to add to that?
No, those were well said.
Okay. There is a follow-up to that question I think is very good. And I do want to ask the question because it's around the dashboards. And in your day-to-day role, what's the difference between your daily dashboard and your quarterly dashboard? How are you setting those up? How are you reviewing those, timing, all of the elements around dashboards?
I'll just hit super quick. I think the thing that we talked about a little bit earlier is, I'm looking for real-time data, right? I need to real-time say, is there a change in my customer usage? Is there a change in engagement? Is there a change in the rhythm that my team is doing in, the sentiment of customers, the rhythm out there of our business? We have 3 segments. I have SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. And so I'm watching all of those a little bit differently. So my day-to-day dashboards are, sentiment of the customer, progress of deals. We have mutual action-based close plans. They're in our product. So being able to say, okay, are they moving forward? Are we hitting the next place? Do we have all the right stakeholders engaged? I'm watching the real time in the business. Are my EBRs going? What's coming out from that discussion? We have a rhythm of the business for our CSMs, and are they doing all their operating rhythms and making sure we're as effective in communicating as we can be. So it is very, very what is happening day to day. And we have lots of dashboards that are showing me that. A lot of them obviously through the product, because this is what we do. But also I think then as you take it in a quarterly perspective, then you're taking a longer term view and you're saying, participation, and you're looking at, obviously retention and NRR and gross renewal rates and all the things that you see better from a quarterly perspective as you give time to the business to say what's working, what's not. Obviously product adoption, all of those things, we spend more time on a quarterly basis to take a step back and saying, what's happening in that evolution, and the productivity and efficiency metrics across all of my team. So whether that's member support, or it's success, or it's our solution consulting teams, value consulting teams, it's obviously the sales teams. what are the efficient, how are we making sure we're laying the next layer of foundation? We're only, several $100 million. How are we laying the next layer of foundation to put a multi-billion-dollar company on top of this? I have to make sure the metrics are reflecting that foundation. So you can't scale without a foundation.
100%.
Easy it probably differs a little bit too if you're managing like enterprise deals with a longer sales cycle versus transactional business too. Because I think with my transactional business, I'm looking at the daily flow of my leads, my bookings, my e-commerce, because I have all the different things. So daily, I want to know real-time data. Anna, to your point, like where am I at today? Because if I fall behind for a couple of days, that's going to put me off for the entire week. But then on the enterprise side, if you were to look at that every single day, it'd be like watching paint dry. So then you probably want to watch how many opportunities have you created maybe that week. And then you want to watch the flow of this moving of stages by week. So I think depending on what type of business you're managing, you might want to manage the flow of it to more granularity, depending on if one bad day is going to make a difference. In a transactional business, it can. Yeah, I think that's more granular, more enterprise, a little bit wider lens.
Totally. And the piece here that also really matters is understanding what you're tracking to. So what are your pacing targets, right? Like it's, same, like I'm an SMB business, so I look at everything daily to understand what is happening there. But if I don't know what that means, it doesn't matter, right? And on a quarterly basis,
good look like, right? What's good look like?
Exactly. It's like, this seems okay, right? But then on a quarterly basis, it's definitely things like, margin, sales and marketing efficiency. But I think as Anna said, like for, if you're losing deals, can we look at it from like a competitor cut? Like what are some of those like broader strokes that as a business you can act around? And it's tougher to do that on a day-to-day basis sometimes.
Yes.
Hello, ladies. So sorry to interrupt. I could listen to y'all speak all day. I'm sure our audience could too. Thank you so much for taking the time and for answering as many questions as we could. And here, closing towards the end, I just wanted to try and get some key takeaways from y'all. So if each of you could just give me a short tweetable quote to just impart on our audience, just to give them a summary of today. So Jamie, why don't you go first?
Sure. The quote I have is, I would say, related to everybody who is aspiring leader of sales or some aspect of it, or CRO. But I will say that there's a tiny bit for maybe a little extra for our female leaders out there, because I do feel that female leaders tend to want to be at 110% ready before we make a change. And then I think we apologize sometimes too much, and I'm putting myself in that bucket. So I'm going to say play to win and win apologetically. Applies to everyone, with a little extra for our female leaders.
Wow. Anna, let's follow that up.
I don't know if I can. There's a revolution happening in go-to-market teams. Lean into it, embrace it, own it. They will not look like they do today 3-5 years from now. They just won't. And if you watch and see what's happening, embrace it. If you do, you're gonna win.
Awesome. And Chloe, how about you?
Yeah, for mine, I think, CRO, it's a big job, right? And so it's always a balancing act. And so mine is how I think that I can operate best, the reminder I give myself, which sometimes isn't the prettiest thing to say, but operate daily with a sense of paranoia, but never lose your long-term optimism. Never lose sight of the prize at the end.
Awesome. And Terry, you want to impart anything that you heard today that you think the audience would benefit from?
I'm going to close with one of my favorites, and it actually is, I would say, extending on to Jamie's, which I love, is a mic drop, by the way. And that is either why not us or why not me?
Love that.
Awesome. If not now, when? I think I'm glowing now, thanks to this panel. I've done lots of these, and I have to say this is incredibly inspirational. On my top, probably my favorite panel I've been a part of. So ladies, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy lives to impart your wisdom on all of us. We really appreciate that. I couldn't have thought of a better panel to close us out for this summit. Those of you tuning in from Austin or New York or SF, I hope that we see some of y'all at the salon and happy hour tonight. If you haven't registered yet, you still have a chance to. And again, thank you all so very much for your wisdom. I'll see you ladies backstage.
Thank you.